Well, let's get the view now. Look at the opinion pages of today's newspapers. Lots of Boris Johnson, backseat driving in Morton Morland's cartoon in the Times. This time the Foreign Secretary is driving the bus, but has crashed into the Prime Minister's car on the road to Florence. Ben Jennings' cartoon in The Guardian has Mr Johnson repeating his promise that he's right behind the Prime Minister as he roller skates on the buses, carrying his £350 million referendum promise. In The Guardian, Matthew D'Ancona writes that this is not a new leadership bid by Mr Johnson, but rather a renewed push for the role because the Foreign Secretary fears he has taken too long to secure it. In The Times, David Cameron's former speechwriter Claire Foges, who has also worked for Mr Johnson, says his blue sky Brexit optimism has become rather tyrannical and even dangerous. Well, here looking through those pages are Sonia, Sodha, who is the leader writer at The Observer and a former advisor to Ed Miliband, and Lucy Fisher, senior political correspondent at The Times. And I should say the regular morning briefing by the Prime Minister's spokeswoman has informed us that the Foreign Secretary's views on Brexit are well known and that he set them out during the referendum campaign, and that Mrs May values the contribution of all her cabinet colleagues. So certainly no official slapdown for Mr Johnson there. So, I mean, we've selected a number of columnists talking really about Boris Johnson's motives, Sonia. Do you reckon Matthew D'Ancona's got it right, that this is not part of a leadership bid?
Well, I think it is part of a leadership bid, but it's a very long-standing one, so it's not a kind of fresh, new one, I suppose, is his point. And, you know, Boris has long wanted the top job. We've all known that. I think he had to sort of bide his time, keep silent for a while after the referendum, you know, in the months since the election. But what he's very clearly trying to do, and this is a point that Claire Foges is making in her piece, is set himself up at some point in the future. We know Theresa May isn't going to be around forever. He's setting himself up on the right of the party as somebody who will say, well, the reason why Brexit went wrong, Prime Minister, is because you didn't do the hard Brexit, the kind of Brexit that I was arguing for in the run-up to the referendum. So this is about him setting out his stall ahead of the leadership contest that there will be after Theresa May steps down.
What do you think, Lucy?
I think that's largely right. I just think the background to this, we've seen recently a lot of kind of concerns about how he's taken on the role of Foreign Secretary, about his competence. I think he's really kind of launched his intervention from the back foot. And at least if it all goes wrong, if he had been slapped down more firmly by the Prime Minister or even sacked, at least he could have said, well, that was due to my boldness rather than incompetence. There is a lot of muttering on the fringes about whether the PM has been trying to pitch roll to demote Boris. So it's interesting the timing that he's insisted on trying to get out ahead of her and her keynote Florence speech later this week.
And we have to understand that there's really two constituents in this. I mean, there's the nation as a whole, but more importantly, if you want to become Tory leader, and at the moment you'd become Prime Minister as well, it's actually your own Tory constituency that you're worried about.
That's absolutely right. And Boris doesn't want to be the fall guy for Brexit going wrong or there being a backlash from the Leave voters within the party. That's why he's setting out his stall here, breaking from what seemed to be the growing cabinet consensus. There does need to be payments to the EU budget after Brexit for around 2 to 3 years. A figure people are suggesting of around 30 billion. It seemed to be what people were
big
suggesting.
Question, yes or no answer. Do you think Boris Johnson will ever be Prime Minister?
No.
No.
Okay. 2 thumbs down for Boris there. This is All Out Politics. Coming up next.